there is a sound that 400 wolves will never forget. It is not a howl, it is not a cry, it is not even close to something dramatic. It is the sound of a small river stone wrapped in braided silver touching a granite table. One small sound, and after it, nothing. Not one breath in the entire hall. Alicia Ashbourne doesn't throw it. She doesn't scream. She does not even look away from the man standing across from her. She simply reaches up, unhooks the clasp at her wrist, and places the bonding token on the stone between them, the way you set down something you have been carrying for too long. Not in anger, but in the quiet finality of a woman who has just stopped pretending the wait was worth it. The great hall of Iron Vale Pack fills every corner of her vision. Silk crests hang between iron torches burning amber. The smell of pine smoke and ceremonial candle wax sits thick in the cold air. 400 wolves dressed in their finest, lords and ladies, heirs and bondmates, elders and young pups barely old enough to attend, every single one of them standing still. Not one of them will meet her eyes. She turns. She straightens her spine until it is a line nothing in this world could bend. And she walks toward the great oak doors at the far end of the hall. She does not know, cannot know, that in the far corner of the hall, at a guest table near the northern pillar, a man who has been watching this room all evening has just set down his cup and stood up. 3 minutes. That is how long Alicia has been standing at the bonding stone. She counted her heartbeats to know, not because counting is the kind of thing a person does when they need something steady to hold on to, and there is nothing else in reach. The hall is enormous on ordinary evenings. Tonight it is enormous in a different way, the way a room gets large when you are suddenly very alone inside it. Across the stone table, Velric Stonecrest stands, with the careful posture of a man who rehearsed this moment and believes he is delivering it with admirable fairness. He is tall. He is well dressed in the deep green of Iron Vale's formal colors. His face carries the particular expression of someone who believes that explaining a thing slowly makes it kind. He says the words, "It is a matter of bloodlines, Alicia. The Kingsridge match strengthens our eastern border claim. The pack law allows a beta heir to dissolve a pre-bonding agreement before the formal ceremony is sealed. I thought it was better, kinder, to tell you now, before the season turns." The word kinder lands on her chest like a stone dropped from a high window. She does not let it show. 2 years. 2 years of invisible, patient, daily work that Velric Stonecrest never once looked down long enough to see. Not just the visible years, the ceremonial dinners where she wore the correct dress and laughed at the right moment and kept his allies comfortable at tables where he made them uneasy. The invisible years, too. The mornings she spent memorizing Eastern pack trade routes because Velric was careless with borders. At the evenings she stayed up reading alliance law so she could whisper suggestions over breakfast and let him walk into council chambers believing the ideas were his own. She had been building something. She had believed in it. He had confused her patience for devotion he was simply owed. He had confused her quiet strength for smallness. And now he stood across a bonding stone and used the word kinder, and his eyes drifted, just once, just for one careless, uncalculated second. To the far side of the hall, Alicia follows his gaze. There, half behind a stone pillar near the eastern wall, stands Nysera Kingsridge, golden-haired, composed, wearing the calm expression of a woman who has been expecting this moment for weeks and is simply waiting for it to catch up with the calendar. She is not celebrating. She is not gloating. She is just already present in a future she has not yet been formally given, and that quiet certainty on her face tells Alicia everything that Velric's careful speech has been carefully avoiding. Alicia looks at Nysera Kingsridge for exactly 1 second. Then she looks back at Velric. She does not speak. There are things she could say, things she has earned the right to say, and she chooses none of them. She reaches up. She unclasps the bonding token at her wrist, a small, smooth river stone set in braided silver, placed there by Velric's own hands on a warm spring evening 2 years ago when she had believed him entirely. She sets it on the granite table between them. The sound it makes is small. The silence it creates is enormous. And then Alicia Ashbourne turns, lifts her chin to the angle that costs her the most to hold, and walks toward the great oak doors at the far end of the hall. Her heels are steady on the stone floor. Her back is straight. Her dress is the deep color of hearthfire, the color of something that still burns even when no one is watching. Not one wolf in that hall speaks. Not one of them moves to follow her. But in the far corner of the room, at a guest table near the northern pillar, a man named Niren Valahart has been sitting quietly since the evening began. He is the alpha of the Valahart Northern Territories, the rival pack whose borders have pressed against Ironvales for 3 generations. He was invited to this gathering as a gesture of inter-pack neutrality, the kind of formal courtesy that both sides extend and neither side truly expects to be accepted. He accepted. He has been quiet all evening, watching, listening with the attentive stillness of a man who came to this hall for a reason and has spent the last hour finding exactly what he came for. When Alicia sets the token down and turns toward the doors, Niren Valahart sets down his cup. He looks at no one. He speaks to no one. He simply rises from his seat, buttons the front of his dark, formal coat, and begins to move, unhurried, deliberate, certain, toward the same great oak doors she has just pushed through. His attendant, Zorion Grimridge, stands sharply to follow. Niren raises one hand. Stay. He goes alone. Outside, the night air hits Alicia's face, cold and sharp and honest. The stone steps of the Ironvale Pack Hall spread before her, long and wide, leading down to the dark road through the packlands. There is no carriage waiting. She did not ask for one. She did not plan for what comes after walking out, because she had not quite let herself believe, until the moment she set that token on the stone, that it would come to this. She allows herself one breath, the kind caught somewhere between a sob and a steadiness, swallowed before it becomes anything larger. Then she begins to walk. The frost-hardened path runs ahead of her through the dark, and the cold fills her lungs cleanly, and the sound of the great hall, muffled, distant, humming with 400 wolves, suddenly remembering how to breathe, falls away behind her. She does not hear the oak doors open again. She does not hear them close. She does not know that someone followed her out, that someone is standing on the top step right now, watching her walk into the dark, and making a decision about what kind of man he wants to be tonight. The chapter closes on Alicia walking alone, and on the steps behind her, on a man standing still in the cold, watching her go. She has covered 50 steps when she hears it, footsteps behind her, not running, not urgent, not the footsteps of a man chasing, unhurried, deliberate. The footsteps of someone who has decided on a direction and is walking toward it calmly, the way people walk when they are certain of where they are going. Alicia stops. She does not run. She does not pretend she has not heard. She turns because she is not a woman who puts her back to things she has not looked at. Niren Valahart is not what she expected. She knows the name, of course. Every wolf in the Southern and Central Territories knows the name Valahart, of the Northern Alpha whose pack holds the coldest land and the strongest border, the man Iron Vale's elders used as a lesson when they wanted to explain the difference between force and power, because Nyren Valhart had never needed to raise his voice to make a room understand exactly where it stood. She had expected something harder, something colder. He is tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark formal coat with no unnecessary decoration. His hair is dark, cut short at the sides. His face is the face of a man who has made difficult decisions for a long time and stopped being startled by them. And his eyes, pale, steady grey, are the eyes of a man who is looking at her the way people look at things they are genuinely trying to understand. He stops at a careful distance, close enough to be heard without raising his voice, no, far enough that a woman who has just had her dignity removed in a room full of people is not being asked to manage another uninvited presence in her space. She notices that. She files it away. Nyren Valhart, he says, not as an introduction, as a fact he is making available. I know who you are. Her voice comes out steadier than she has any right to expect. I want to know why you followed me. He does not look away. Because you are walking alone in the dark after something that should not have happened in a hall I was sitting in. A pause. And because I have something to say to you that is better said out here than in there. She waits. He speaks plainly, without performance, the way people speak when they have no interest in dressing the truth in something easier. He tells her he has been aware of her work within the Iron Vale Alliance structure for 2 full seasons, that he sat at 3 Interpack gatherings over the past year and watched her manage 2 territorial negotiations at Velric's side, and recognized, without needing anyone to tell him, that the intelligence guiding those negotiations was not Velric Stonecrest's, that the thinking was hers, the steadiness was hers. The careful, patient reading of every room was entirely hers. He tells her that he needs a partner at his council table, not a decoration, not a ceremonial bondmate whose name appears on documents and whose face appears at gatherings. A partner. Someone who thinks the way she thinks, who does what she has been doing, quietly, without credit, without complaint, and does it somewhere it will actually matter. He offers her the terms directly. Her family's Ashbourne lands come under northern protection. Her father's border debts, quiet, old, the kind of debt a modest man accumulates over careful years, are settled, immediately and without condition. She takes the formal position of bonded mate to the Alpha of Valehart, with full title and council standing. And then he says the thing that stops her entirely. There is a 2-year release clause. If at the end of 2 years the arrangement has become something you cannot carry, for any reason, no explanation required, you walk away clean. Your lands remain protected. The agreement holds. You owe me nothing. Alicia looks at him for a long moment. What you are describing is a transaction. It is an accord with honest terms, he says, which is more than what just happened to you in there. She is quiet. She is thinking. She does not rush the silence, and he does not fill it, which is a thing she files away alongside the careful distance and the even gaze. I have conditions of my own, she says. Something shifts in his expression. It is not surprise exactly. It is the particular attention of a man who has encountered something he didn't fully account for and is choosing, deliberately, to take it seriously. Say them. A real seat at your council. Not a chair they pull out for ceremonies. a voice on territorial matters, heard before decisions are made, not after. She meets his grey eyes and does not look away. And I want to be present at the next high gathering, the formal one, or the one that Velric Stonecrest will attend. Nyren looks at her for one beat longer than the moment technically requires. Then he extends his hand, open palm, the gesture of an accord between equals, not the gesture of someone extending charity downward. Then we have an accord, Alicia Ashbourne. She looks at his hand. She places hers in it. His grip is warm and certain, and nothing at all like a rescue. It feels, she thinks, like the beginning of something that has not yet decided what it is. He walks her to his carriage. Behind them, the Iron Vale Pack Hall glows amber against the dark, its torches burning on without any awareness that something irreversible has just happened on its front steps. The sound of the gathering, voices reassembling, the particular hum of 400 wolves processing something they did not see coming, carries faintly on the cold air. She does not look back. Inside the carriage, crossing into Northern Road territory, neither of them speaks for a long stretch. The wheels roll over frost-hard ground. The dark trees pass the windows in silence. The lamps inside the carriage cast a low, warm light. Alicia watches the road ahead through the window glass and realizes, with a clarity she was not expecting, that she is not afraid. She is, in fact, more awake than she has felt in 2 years. Across the carriage, Nyren Valahart sits with his coat still buttoned, looking at the road on his side, thinking whatever careful thoughts live behind those steady grey eyes. He does not fill the silence with unnecessary words, or he does not perform warmth he has not earned. The silence is not uncomfortable. It is the silence of two careful people sharing space for the first time, and finding, to what is for both of them, a quiet, mutual surprise, that it does not feel wrong. The Valahart Northern Estate runs differently from anywhere Alicia has lived before. She notices it within the first hour. There is no wasted motion. The staff moves with the quiet efficiency of people who have been trusted to do their work well and have, over time, become exactly that. The house itself is older than the Iron Vale Hall. Dark stone, heavy timber, high ceilings with carved beams, but it is not cold. It has the particular warmth of a place that has been genuinely lived in for many generations by people who took it seriously. The Lady Valora Valahart meets her in the entrance hall. 64 years old, straight-backed, sharp-eyed, with the posture of a woman who decided decades ago that slouching was for people with nothing to say. She looks at Alicia the way a smith looks at raw material, not unkindly, but with complete and unhurried assessment. Then she says, without preamble, "Finally, a woman who walked out instead of down," and she sets to work. The 4 days that follow are unlike anything Alicia has experienced. Seamstresses arrive on the first morning with bolts of fabric in colours that are not the warm hearth-fire tones Iron Vale favoured. These are the colours of the north. Deep winter sky, dark iron blue, silver that catches light like ice on still water. Lady Valora supervises every fitting with the focused attention of a woman conducting a military campaign, and if she has opinions about the previous 2 years of Alicia's wardrobe choices, she keeps them entirely to herself. A bondsmith comes on the first afternoon, an old man with quiet hands and an eye for stones that carry what he calls old weight. He brings a collection in a worn leather case, and he and Lady Valora speak in the shorthand of people who have known each other for 30 years, while Alicia watches and understands that something important is being decided. On the second morning, Orvan Ashbourne arrives, her father. He comes through the front doors of the northern estate looking a decade older than his years, a quiet man who has spent 2 sleepless nights imagining the worst, and the worst he imagined was probably more accurate than he would want to admit. His coat is travel-wrinkled. His eyes are dark from no sleep. He scans the entrance hall the way worried fathers scan rooms when they are looking for one specific face. He finds it. Alicia crosses the hall to him. She takes both his hands in hers, his hands that have always been warm, the hands she remembers from childhood as the safest thing in any room. Papa. Everything is all right. He looks at her face, the way he has looked at her face since she was small, reading it for the truth that lives beneath the words. She tells him everything. The accord, the terms, the release clause, Nyron's directness, the council seat, the protection for the Ashbourne lands. She speaks clearly and without softening anything, because he deserves the honest version and has always been able to carry it. When she finishes, he is quiet for a long moment. His thumbs move over her hands in small, absent circles. "Are you safe?" he asks. "Not the lands, not the alliance. You." "I think," she says, and the honesty of what she's about to say surprises even her. "That this is the first time in 2 years I have felt safe." He nods once. His eyes carry something complicated, proud and quiet and carefully held, the expression of a man who raised a daughter by himself after her mother passed and spent 24 years trying to give her something solid to stand on, and is only now understanding that she was solid all along. Later that day, Nyron meets with Orvan privately. Alicia does not attend. She watches from an upstairs window as the 2 men walk the edge of the inner garden, Nyron speaking carefully, Orvan listening with his hands folded behind his back, the posture of a man deciding what he thinks. When Orvan emerges from the meeting, he is walking differently, a straightness in his spine that Alicia has not seen since she was a child, before the border debts and the long, quiet years of a modest man's modest losses. He looks up at the upstairs window. He nods once. Alicia presses her hand flat against the glass, and she lets herself cry, quietly, briefly, for the relief of watching her father breathe freely again. Not for Velric, not for what was taken from her in that hall. For this. On the 3rd evening, Nyron brings her tea. She is in the reading room with a territorial law text open on the table beside her, the kind of reading she does when she wants to understand the ground she is standing on before she puts her full weight down. The fire is burning low. The house is quiet. She did not ask anyone for anything. The door opens. Nyron enters, sets a cup of tea on the table beside her reading chair without a word, and turns to leave. She looks up. He has already turned, already walking back toward the door. She looks down at the cup. It is the right temperature, the right kind. She had mentioned once, in passing in the carriage, that she preferred the northern blend over the sweeter southern varieties. Once, in passing. He remembered. She says nothing about it. Neither does he. But she picks up the cup, and she adds the moment to the quiet drawer in her mind where she has been storing things she is not ready to name yet. The 4th morning brings the bonding stone. Alicia stands before a tall mirror in the preparation room while Lady Vylora circles her with the focus of a woman who has done this before and intends to do it correctly. The gown is the color of deep winter sky, midnight blue with silver thread worked through the hem in a pattern that catches light when she moves. Her hair is dressed simply, the way she prefers it. Nothing excessive. Nothing that performs more than it is. Lady Vylora opens the bondsmith's leather case. The stone inside is unlike anything from the Iron Veil collection, deep silver set in dark iron, cold to the touch, or heavy in the way that old things are heavy, with the weight of time and all the hands that have held it. The bondsmith told Lady Valora it was last worn publicly at a formal ceremony a generation ago, and every wolf in the Northern Territories would recognize it immediately. Every wolf in the wider pack world would recognize it too. They would know, without a single word of explanation, exactly what it meant. Lady Valora clasps it at Alicia's throat, steps back, studies her. They will not see a woman still being discarded when they look at you, she says. Her voice is even and direct. They will see what is standing in front of them. She pauses. Who are you? Alicia looks at her own reflection. For a moment, she is aware of all the things she has been called, thought of, arranged around. The patient one, the quiet one, or the woman standing beside the heir, the woman walking out of the hall. She is aware of 2 years of invisible work, and 1 moment of a token-touching stone, and 50 steps into the cold before she heard footsteps behind her. She raises her chin. She looks at herself in the mirror, and she says, simply, without performance, I am the Alpha Queen. Lady Valora's expression does not change, but her eyes do something that in another woman would have been warmth. The particular warmth of someone watching a thing they believed in arrive. Yes, she says. Now let us go remind them. The Central Territory's high gathering hall is larger than Iron Vale's. It has seen 3 generations of alliances made and broken, borders redrawn and contested, old bloodlines ending and new ones announced. But its walls carry the crests of every major pack in the region. Its stone floor has held the weight of too many significant moments to count. Tonight, it is about to hold one more. The herald's voice carries through the hall the way a single, clear note carries through a cathedral, clean and certain, reaching every corner before any echo answers it. Nyren Valeheart, Alpha of the Northern Territories, and his bonded mate, Alicia of the House Ashbourne, Alpha Queen of the Northern Pack. The hall does not produce a polite hush. It produces the kind of silence that falls too fast and too completely. The silence of 400 wolves revising everything they thought they understood, simultaneously, in the space between 2 heartbeats. At the top of the entrance stairs, Nyren Valeheart stands in the dark, formal coat of the northern rank, with the royal northern mark visible at his collar. Beside him, her hand resting on his arm, stands Alicia Ashbourne, in the winter sky gown with the old iron bonding stone at her throat, catching the hall's torchlight in silver. The descent is slow, deliberate, designed to be witnessed. Nyren's other hand comes to rest briefly over hers on his arm, a warm, certain pressure that only she can feel. He leans slightly toward her. His voice is low enough that only she receives it. Look at them as though they are part of the landscape. She lifts her chin. She scans the hall below them, the faces turning, the conversation stopping, the particular frozen quality of people caught between composure and astonishment. She finds Velric Stonecrest. He is standing near the center of the room, perfectly still, with a cup going cold in his hand. His face carries the expression of a man who has been using a map for 2 years and has just discovered the map was wrong in ways he cannot immediately calculate. Alicia looks at him for exactly 1 second. Then she looks at the room ahead of her and continues down the stairs. Near the eastern wall, Nysera Kingsridge reads the situation faster than Velric does. She is sharp, whatever else she is. She takes in the bonding stone at Alicia's throat, the northern mark at Nyren's collar, the absolute silence of the room, and she makes a calculation in the time it takes most people to blink. She turns to Velric. She says something about her father needing a word regarding the Eastern trade arrangements. Her voice is perfectly steady, her face perfectly composed, and she excuses herself into the crowd with the practiced ease of a woman who knows how to move through a room without appearing to retreat. She does not return. Velric watches her disappear into the crowd. He looks, for the first time all evening, genuinely alone. He cannot stop himself. Some part of him, the part that has not yet fully understood what the last 4 days have produced, steps forward as Nyren and Alicia reach the floor of the hall. Alicia! His voice carries a confusion that he has not had time to dress in anything more presentable. What is the meaning of this? Alicia stops. She turns to look at him, and the expression on her face is the thing the hall will talk about for a long time afterward, because it is not cold, and it is not angry, and it is not triumphant. It is simply calm, a calm so complete and so unhurried that it is almost its own form of artistry. Good evening, Velric. Her voice is warm, genuinely warm, the warmth of someone who has not been thinking about this person at all and is mildly pleased to encounter them. I hope the season has treated you well. Nyren steps very slightly forward, not aggressively. He simply moves, and his height and his absolute stillness have the effect of making Velric's agitation look very small by contrast. Alicia Ashbourne is my bonded mate, Nyren says. His voice fills the hall without effort. The room that was already quiet goes quieter. I would ask that you address your queen with the respect her title deserves. He holds Velric's gaze for one additional beat, even, unhurried. You released her from something she had outgrown. I simply opened a better door. Then he moves forward, and Alicia moves with him, and Velric Stonecrest is left standing in the middle of the floor, with his cold cup and his map with all the wrong roads on it. The hall does not go silent after that. It goes electric. The sound that moves through it is the sound of 400 wolves understanding all at once that the story they thought they were watching has been something else, entirely. From the very beginning, conversation breaks out like water released from a dam, urgent, astonished, edged with the particular energy of a room that has just witnessed something it did not predict and is only beginning to process the full shape of it. Alicia accepts a cup from a passing server. She stands beside Nyren Valahart in the warm amber light of the great gathering hall, and she allows herself, quietly and completely, to feel exactly what she has earned. Not revenge. She has no interest in revenge. Just this, the particular piece of a woman who walked out of one hall and into her own life, and is now standing in the middle of it, exactly where she belongs. 12 days into her life, at the Valahart Northern Holdings, Nirel Frostvale brings her a letter. Nirel is Alicia's attendant, assigned by Lady Valora on the morning after the gathering, presented without ceremony, with only the explanation that she was capable and loyal and would be useful. Nirel is 22, quiet without being empty, with sharp eyes, and the particular quality of someone who notices everything and comments on very little. She has, in the 12 days since, proven to be exactly what Lady Valora promised. She brings the letter to the morning room with the careful expression of someone who has already decided her mistress needs to see it before anyone else does. Alicia reads it. She reads it again. It is from Lieren Shadowridge, one of Nyren's senior council lords, a man who has been in service to the Valahart seat for more than 15 years, who built his influence during the long years before Alicia arrived, and who has spent the 12 days since the gathering watching her with the polished neutrality of a man whose thoughts are elsewhere than his face. The letter is addressed to 3 allied packs. It has been copied. They will each have received it before Nyren's own copy arrives. In careful, measured language, it raises questions about Alicia's suitability as Alpha Queen. It notes her bloodline, Ashborn, modest, or no dominant Alpha heritage in 3 generations. It expresses concern in the language of deep respect for the Northern Alliance's strength, that a queen without the appropriate heritage may complicate the credibility of the Northern seats standing among their allies. It is not a threat. It is worse than a threat. It is a quiet, patient political undermining, dressed in the careful language of concern. Alicia folds it. She places it in the drawer of her writing desk. She goes to breakfast. At the council table that morning, Leorin Shadowridge speaks about the southeastern border agreement with the relaxed confidence of a man who believes the ground beneath him is solid. He has a good voice for council rooms, smooth, measured, practiced, and he uses it well. Alicia listens to him speak for 12 minutes. Then she asks 2 questions. The first reframes the entire premise of his opening argument in a way that requires the room to reconsider the last 10 minutes of discussion. The second reveals a detail about the southeastern border terrain that Leorin has not accounted for, a detail she found in a land survey map she read on her 3rd evening in the library, filed between 2 less interesting documents that most people would not have thought to open. The council table pauses. Nyren, at the head of the table, looks at her with that expression, the one she has noticed before, the one that lasts 1 beat too long, the way a person pauses when they have encountered something they were not expecting and are choosing to take it seriously instead of moving past it. She does not meet his eyes yet. She has work to do. Over the next 3 weeks, she does it quietly. Council sessions, every one of them. She attends with the focused presence of someone who is building something, and building it one careful piece at a time. She asks the questions that reframe. She remembers the details that others have filed and forgotten. She earns, slowly and without announcement, the particular kind of respect that cannot be given, only observed, until enough people have observed it that it becomes impossible to argue against. Outside the council sessions, she works differently. Leorin's letter had named 3 specific allies, 3 lords whose cooperation, he implied, might become complicated by questions about Alicia's fitness for her role. She identifies them one by one and moves carefully. A well-timed letter to the First Lord, and referencing a shared territorial interest she had researched before anyone asked her to. A dinner conversation with the Second Lord's bondmate, a woman of sharp intelligence and warm manner who has been largely overlooked at every official gathering, and is, Alicia quickly discovers, the actual reason her husband makes sound decisions. A quiet correction of a trade route misunderstanding that had been quietly irritating the Third Lord's Council for 2 seasons, and that Alicia resolved in a single afternoon with the right document and the right phrasing. 3 weeks, 3 alliances, not weakened, as Leorin intended, but stronger than they were before she arrived. Nyren finds her in the library at the end of the 2nd week, still working at the desk, long after the house has gone to bed. He doesn't comment on the hour. He crosses to the table. He adjusts the lamp, moves it slightly closer to where her papers are spread, so the light falls better on the page. Then he leaves. She watches him go. She sits with the quiet warmth of that small, unasked-for thing for a moment. Then she picks up her pen and keeps working. On a morning near the end of the 3rd week, she looks up from the council table to find Nyren standing in the doorway of the council room, watching her review documents before the session begins. He is not studying the papers. He is looking at her with the particular attention of a man who is trying to understand something and is not yet sure what language to use for it. He notices her notice him. He does not look away. He simply walks in and takes his seat at the head of the table. Neither of them says anything, but she thinks about it for the rest of the day. She places the letter in front of him on the council table one morning before the session begins. 2 documents. The original letter from Leoren, and a single sheet in her own clear, even handwriting. The sheet names the 3 lords Leoren had targeted. It details the current status of each alliance, stronger, each of them, by specific and demonstrable measures. It ends with one line: "The ground is steadier than it was. I thought you should know what you were standing on." Nyren reads both documents. He is quiet for a long moment. The council chamber around them is still empty. They are the only 2 people in the room. The morning light comes through the high stone windows in long, pale bars. He looks up at her. "You handled this alone?" "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" She meets his grey eyes and doesn't look away. "Because you would have confronted it directly, and a direct confrontation would have made it larger than it needed to be. I made it smaller instead." He is quiet for another moment. Then he says, very quietly, quieter than she has heard him speak in the council room before, "Do not do that again." She waits. "Not because I doubt your judgment," he says, "because I would rather carry the weight beside you than find out afterward that you were carrying it alone." It is the most personal thing he has said to her. Neither of them mentions it again. But something shifts in the space between them, standing in the empty council chamber in the pale morning light that does not shift back. Nyren calls a full territorial council. Or it is not a routine session. Every lord, every pack elder in the Northern Alliance, every allied representative who holds a seat. The message that went out carried the formal weight that tells people they do not send a deputy. They come themselves. The chamber fills slowly, and with the particular tense energy of people who know something significant is arriving. They arrange themselves at the long table and in the tiered seating above it, with the careful positioning of those trying to determine which side of what is coming they want to be standing on. Leoren Shadowridge arrives on time. He sits in his council seat with the composed ease of a man who believes he has assessed the situation correctly and prepared for every angle of it. His posture is perfect. His expression is neutral. He looks, to any observer who does not know where to look, exactly like a man with nothing to be concerned about. He is wrong. Elysia presents 3 months of work to the full table. She does not raise her voice. She does not perform outrage. She does not make speeches. She simply lays it out, document by document, lord by lord, date by date, with the patient, precise clarity of a woman who has been preparing this presentation since the morning Nirel brought her a sealed letter, with the careful expression of someone who had already read it. The alliances Leoren claimed she would cost the northern seat. The correspondence he had sent, recovered through channels it is better, for now, not to name in full detail. The names of the lords he had quietly encouraged toward skepticism, and then the current status of each of those alliances. Steadier or warmer, more genuinely committed than they were before she arrived, because she had spent 3 weeks making them so. "I am not asking this council to take my word for any of this," she says, when the documents have been read. "I am asking you to take your own." The room is quiet. Leoren's composure holds for approximately 40 seconds. Then he attempts a counter, a smooth, prepared argument about the proper channels for alliance correspondence, the legitimate concerns of senior council members about procedural matters. His first sentence reveals something that a man with clean hands would not know. The room hears it. Several heads turn. He stops. Niren has said nothing throughout the session. He does not need to. He is watching the room do the work itself, which is what rooms do when someone has laid out the truth without embellishment and given the people in it enough credit to see it clearly. The table turns, not dramatically, not with speeches or declarations. One by one, in the measured language of men who understand what they are doing, the allied lords reaffirm their standing. Lioran's title is stripped, his council seat removed. He is given a week to settle his affairs. He stands. He walks to the chamber doors. They close behind him. The sound is not dramatic. It is simply final. Velric Stonecrest has been in the chamber since the session began. He is here as part of the Interpack Observer rotation, the formal arrangement that allows allied packs to send representatives to significant council sessions as a gesture of transparency. He has been sitting in the upper tier, progressively smaller as the session progressed, watching a woman he once dismissed as quiet become the most capable person in a room full of experienced wolves. When Lioran's title is stripped and the doors close behind him, Velric stands. He moves down from the upper tier to the floor of the chamber. He is pale. His eyes are red at the edges in the way of someone who has not slept well in some time. He crosses the floor toward where Alicia stands, and the room, reading what is about to happen, goes completely quiet. Alicia. His voice carries the particular quality of a man who had a speech prepared and has realized, arriving at the moment, that it is wrong for this room. I did not understand what I was doing. I thought it was a territorial calculation. Oh, I thought the Kingsridge match was... I never intended for you to... She stops him. Not with sharpness. Not with a raised hand. Simply with the calm of a woman who has no anger left for this person. Not because the anger was never there, but because she has been somewhere else, for months now, building something real, and this is a conversation she has already finished in her own mind. The room holds its breath. She looks at Velric Stonecrest with clear, steady eyes. The eyes of a woman who does not live in that story anymore, and is not bitter about the door being closed behind her, because she has found something far better on the other side of it. You had 2 years, Velric. Her voice is quiet. Not cold, quiet the way honesty is quiet. 2 years to see what was standing beside you, and you chose a border agreement instead. A pause, but I cannot be angry about that. It was your choice to make. She lets that sit for a moment. Then she gives him the thing she has already decided on. I want you to keep your title. Keep your pack. Keep your name and your lands and your place in every gathering you are entitled to attend. Her voice does not waver. What will follow you is not the story of a villain. People give villains credit. What will follow you is simply this, that you held the future Alpha Queen of the Northern Territories in your hands for 2 years, weighed her against an eastern border claim, and chose wrong. The chamber is absolutely still. That is your sentence, Velric. Not exile, not disgrace. Simply the knowledge, every time you walk into a room she has already made hers, of exactly what you gave away. She holds his gaze for one final beat. Then she turns back to the council table. In the upper tier of the chamber, someone lets out a breath that is almost a helpless, disbelieving sound. The sound a room makes when it did not expect the moment to land that way and had no defense against it. It spreads, quiet, undeniable. Velric does not move. He stands in the middle of the chamber floor, and he is a man who has just heard his own future described with absolute precision and recognized it down to the bone. The house is quiet in the way houses go quiet after significant things, Not empty quiet, but settled quiet. The particular stillness of a place where something has been resolved and the air has not yet decided what comes next. Alicia is in the library. She has a book open on her lap that she has been not reading for the past hour, or the fire has burned down to deep amber coals. The lamp beside her chair burns low and warm. Outside the library windows, the first wolves of the evening have begun calling into the cold night, a sound she has come to find, over these months, genuinely settling. A sound that belongs to the place she is in. She hears the library door. Nyren comes in, still dressed from the evening session. Coat unbuttoned now, the formal bearing of the council room put down somewhere between the chamber and here. He crosses to the chair across from hers and sits down, without asking whether she minds. She does not mind. She realizes, sitting quietly with that fact, that she has not minded his presence in some time. He does not begin with strategy. He begins where people begin, when they have run out of reasons not to. The accord I offered you on the steps outside the Iron Veil Hall, he says, without preamble, looking at the fire rather than at her. It was the most self-serving thing I had done in a decade of governing. She is still listening. I called it an accord because calling it what it actually was felt like something I had no right to say to a woman who had just been publicly let go by a man who did not deserve her. He pauses. I told you it was about the council seat, about the territorial alliance, about your father's lands, and the practicality of the arrangement. A beat. Those things are true. They were also not the reason I followed you out of that hall. He looks up at her then. His grey eyes in the low firelight are the same eyes she saw on cold stone steps outside the Iron Veil Hall, or the same eyes that have been present, careful, steady, always one beat longer than necessary, in every room she has shared with him since. I came to that gathering for political intelligence, he says. I had received word 3 weeks prior that Velric intended to break the bonding agreement, and I came to see what you would do when the floor gave way beneath you. I needed to know whether you were what I believed you to be. Another pause. The pause of a man choosing honesty over composure. You were. He goes still. I have been watching you work for 3 months. I have been trying to find the right distance to stand at, and I do not think there is one. His voice is very quiet, completely certain. I think I simply want to be where you are. He stops. He sits with what he has just said, the way a person sits with something irreversible, waiting to find out whether it was brave or correct, or both or neither. Alicia looks at him across the low amber light of the library fire. She thinks about the carriage, the silence that felt, against all reason, like the beginning of something. She thinks about the cup of tea placed beside her reading chair without comment or expectation. She thinks about the lamp moved closer to her papers at midnight, the weight he asked to carry beside her in the morning light of an empty council chamber. She thinks about a man who stood on cold stone steps outside a hall where someone had just made the worst decision of his life and chose, without any certainty about what came next, to follow her out. She sets her book down. She stands up. She crosses the room to where he is sitting, and she takes his face in both her hands, the gesture completely deliberate, completely hers, the reversal fully intended, and she kisses him first. Not a transaction, not an accord, not a careful, measured gesture with terms attached. Just the honest, simple arrival of 2 people who have been circling something true for long enough that the circling has become more exhausting than the arrival. When they pull apart, his hands are at her waist and the fire is burning its lowest, and outside the library windows the evening wolves are still calling into the dark. He rests his forehead against hers. For a moment, neither of them speaks. "We have a ceremony tomorrow," he says. "I know." "Then let us go in, Alicia." She smiles against his cheek. And warm and unguarded, the smile of a woman who is not waiting for anything anymore, because everything she was waiting for is here. "I am already home," she says. The formal bonding ceremony is witnessed by every allied pack in the Northern and Central Territories. The bond smith clasps the old iron stone at her throat, the same stone Lady Valora placed there 4 days before the gathering, the stone that turned every head in that hall, and it blazes in the ceremonial light with a warmth that cold iron has no right to produce. Nyren's hand covers hers at the stone altar in a gesture that is identical in form to every formal bonding ceremony she has ever witnessed, and entirely different in substance. Because there is nothing performed in the way he holds her hand, nothing ceremonial in the way his thumb moves, once, across her knuckles, or she feels it. She holds it. She lets it matter. The years that follow are not a simple story. No life lived fully is simple. There are hard seasons, border disputes that take months to resolve, council sessions that grind on past midnight, a fever that runs through the northern holdings one winter and frightens everyone badly before it finally passes. There are losses. Lord Vaelor of the Eastern Ridge, who was at that first council session and who dies at 92, leaving behind a library she spends 3 weeks going through herself. Lady Valora herself, who goes at 69, which is too soon, and who leaves a note in a small wooden box addressed to Alicia in her particular handwriting. The note says, "You were always going to be a queen. I was simply pleased to be standing there the morning you believed it." Because Alicia keeps it in the desk drawer where she once kept Lioren's letter. The difference in weight between those 2 pieces of paper is something she thinks about sometimes. A son is born in the 4th year of the bond. He comes out serious, with Nyren's grey eyes and an expression of focused attention that makes the bondsmith laugh, and Lady Valora's successor shake her head in fond disbelief. He is, from his first weeks, a child who watches rooms before he enters them. Alicia recognizes the habit. She nurtures it carefully. A daughter comes 2 years later, laughing from her first days, reaching always for the brightest thing in any space she occupies. She has Alicia's coloring and Nyren's absolute certainty about what she wants, which is a combination that produces a personality so vivid that the northern holdings require an adjustment period. Alicia loves both of them so completely that there is, at times, a physical quality to it, a weight in the chest, a kind of gratitude that has no sufficient language. Velric Stonecrest attends ceremonies. He is, by all formal measures, a lord in good standing. He keeps his title. He keeps his pack. He manages his lands with reasonable competence, and remarries, in the 7th year, to a woman from the Coldbrook family who appears to understand him better than the previous arrangement permitted. He is not a villain in anyone's story. Alicia meant that, and the pack world, over time, understood that she meant it. But she was also right about what follows him. But every time he enters a hall where Alicia is already present, and she is often already present because she does not wait for rooms to fill before she enters them, he knows. She can see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his gaze finds her face, and then moves carefully away. The particular quality of a man carrying a weight that no one assigned him, because the truth is sometimes its own consequence. She does not pity him. She does not despise him either. She simply continues being exactly where she is, which is, she has found, the most complete answer to any of it. 20 years on. The northern holdings look different in some ways. New timber on the east wing, a library that has grown beyond its original walls, and a courtyard where her daughter once chased the border dogs in circles for an entire afternoon, while her son watched from the steps with his arms folded, 11 years old and already deeply exasperated by chaos. But the high terrace is the same. The old oaks are the same. The view over the northern ridge, as the moon comes up behind the tree line and the first stars appear above the hills, is the same as it was on the first night she stood here and understood that she was somewhere she intended to stay. Nyren stands beside her. 20 years on, his hair has more silver in it, and there are lines at the corners of his eyes that were not there on the stone steps outside the Iron Veil Hall, and she finds both things so completely right that she cannot imagine either of them otherwise. He is looking at the moon. Then he turns to look at her. "Are you happy?" he asks. She is quiet for a moment, not because she is searching for the answer. She knows the answer. She is quiet because she wants to give him the true one instead of the easy one. "Happiness is what you feel when you get what you wanted," she says. The night air is cool. The old oaks move slightly in the wind. "What I have is what you feel when you get a life that was worth the living." He turns toward her. His grey eyes in the moonlight are the same eyes they have always been. The eyes she first saw on cold stone steps, the eyes that have been steady and present, and one beat longer than necessary in every room she has shared with him since. He takes her gently by the shoulders and turns her toward him. "I love you, Alicia Valehart." She looks at him, this man who followed her out of a hall, who offered her honest terms in the cold, who moved a lamp closer to her papers at midnight, who asked to carry weight beside her instead of finding out afterward that she carried it alone. She smiles. She rests her head against his chest and feels the warmth of him, solid, certain, unchanged. "I know," she says. "I love you too, Nyren." Below the terrace, in the courtyard, the evening howl rises. 100 voices, the northern pack, their pack, the wolves who have been raised on these lands and who will raise their own children here, calling into the cold and the dark and the wide, clear night the way wolves have always called. The sound is ancient. It is resonant. It fills the hills and comes back changed, larger, more than any single voice could make alone. It marks the close of another day, in a life that has been, by any honest measure, entirely worth the having.